Today's lesson is topic writing, a garden carried in the pocket. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Hanny.
And, of course, today we're going to be talking about our topic writing unit for the month of August. We're right at the tail end of August here, so hopefully the hot summer will go away soon. And we're talking about reading, okay? People like to read books and magazines and novels and things like that. And we've got some example essays here that you could write if you're going to talk about your favorite genre of reading.
好，我们这个月的主题是写作呢，要来练习写我们最喜欢的书籍种类，然后去讲它的原因啊，还有这个书带给你的影响。那我们看我们的标题，它说 A garden carried in the pocket。 其实你有时候听到这句说 A book is like a garden carried in a pocket， 它是源自于阿拉伯谚语，就是你的书就好像口袋里的花园，你一打开就好像发现了全新世界一样。所以我觉得这是很可爱很漂亮的意象，那就是可以表达像我们说那种开卷有益的意思。那我们现在就来 进行练习咯，看看你要怎么写，说你要怎么表达你最喜欢的书啊，还有那个相关的原因还有影响了。
You bet. So if you're writing an essay, you could begin with the following sample paragraph. It says, I have loved reading since I was a child. Back then, I read anything and everything. But as I grew up, I became more particular about what I read. Eventually, I realized that the genre I enjoyed most was magical realism. So notice this is an introductory paragraph here, and the writer is kind of leading up to the topic sentence here. Yeah, I've loved reading since I was a child. I read everything and anything I could get my hands on, but as I grew older, I was more particular. I was more choosy about what kind of books I read. So eventually, after a certain amount of time, I've decided that the genre or the kind of reading I enjoyed the most was something called magical realism.
好，我们的文章呢可以分成两段。第一段呢就是先直接说明你喜爱阅读，然后你喜欢哪一种类的书，或者是你也不见得要表明自己喜爱阅读，只是你的开头还是要带出一些相关性。像我们课文的范例，他就说从小就喜欢阅读啊，然后当时什么都读，长大之后变得越来越挑，最后发现自己喜欢的类型是什么。所以从小时候的爱阅读很广泛，一直说到现在是发现自己最喜欢 是什么类型，把它引出来你要讲的种类。那这边他说的是 magical realism， 就是魔幻写实主义。好，那现在换我们来练习别的情境写写看。也许呢你是从小呢爸妈都会在你睡前的时候念书给你听，然后从那时候你就开始培养出你对阅读的喜爱。那也许你就可以从这边再带出说你喜欢不同类型题材的作品，但你最爱的是什么？是吗？ 像这边假设你喜欢的是回忆录，我们来学一下 memoir 这个字就是回忆录。那我们试着请 Roger 老师告诉我们说，如果是这样的情境，就是你从小是听着爸妈念故事给你听，然后慢慢长大你喜欢的是像回忆录，那这样的练习该怎么说呢？
Right on there, Hanny. So, of course, maybe you don't particularly enjoy magical realism. So here's what you might say if you just happen to enjoy memoirs. And so here we've got an example paragraph that you could write if you were writing about memoirs. And here it begins by saying, well, when I was little, my parents would read to me every night before bed. Like when I was a child, when I was young, of course, my parents would read bedtime stories to me before I went to sleep. That was often the most enjoyable part of my day. And that could also be the most enjoyable part of the day for the parents. I know I certainly liked reading stories to my daughter when she was little. And again, here the writer did enjoy hearing those stories read to him or her. My love for reading has only increased since then. These days, I love reading across genres, but some of my favorite books are memoirs. And just a few seconds ago, of course, Hanny told us what a memoir is. That's similar to an autobiography. An autobiography, of course, is a book that someone writes about themselves, and they basically tell the story of their whole life, whereas a memoir is someone talking about their life, but only certain parts, and they usually tend to focus on certain topics or themes and things like that, and so it becomes a memoir, kind of a reflection back on life, rather than just telling the story like it's an article in an encyclopedia or something like that.
哦，所以 memoir 是回忆录，它跟 autobiography 会是不太一样。那个 autobiography 是自传，那其实就是像我们这样讲，刚刚作者他提到这个魔幻现实主义，那接着就会想要告诉读者说，这样的类型的书是什么样的特色，还有我们待会也会用我们那个情境，就是带到说这个回忆录跟自传是什么样的特色。那我们现在就来看看课文范例，他要开始说明这个魔幻写实主义的这个书的特色，还有呢，接着还要带出他喜欢的原因。那我们请 Roger 老师帮我们念念看。
And here's what the essay continues to tell us. These stories tend to treat ordinary events as extraordinary and extraordinary events as mundane, blurring the line between fantasy and reality. So maybe you have not heard about this genre, magical realism. So this paragraph here just assumes that people don't really know what this kind of book is. So this is what it is. They tend to treat ordinary, everyday events as extraordinary. Okay, so most of us go through our days not really thinking too much about getting on the bus and riding our scooter and parking it and walking to the office. And those things are just kind of ordinary. But these kinds of books will take those ordinary events and turn them into something exciting. It will turn them into extraordinary events, and if something's extraordinary, it's not normal, it's very, very special. And then this genre of book will take extraordinary events like an earthquake or your favorite team winning the championship or something like that. It will take those events and treat them as mundane. So because these books do that, they blur the line between fantasy and reality. So here we've got the verb to blur, which means to make things less clear. Okay, so sometimes, of course, we know the difference between what is fantasy, what is make-believe, and what is reality, and these books kind of blur that line. It makes it difficult for us to tell what is real and what is imaginary.
好，我们来看看这边他说啊，这个魔幻写实主义这种书的特色就是说，他们这些书常常会把平凡的事件看作是非同寻常，然后把非同寻常的事件看得很平凡，所以就模糊了奇幻跟现实的界限了。所以有时候你可能看到一般可能等公车这么平凡的事，也许在这个书里面它会变得很特别的惊艳或什么的，所以就是把我们说这个 blurring the line between fantasy and reality， 就是模糊了奇幻与现实的界限的意思。好，那接着回到我们刚刚另外一个情境，就是说回忆录的部分。那回忆录在写什么？自传在写什么呢？也许你可能要告诉读者，他们才会比较清楚知道这个区别。所以也许这边你就可以接着写说，回忆录跟自传相似，自传是比较关于呈现作者他人生、他的生活的这种客观事实。那么回忆录它会着重在可能是自我反省啊，也许你可以看到他内心独白是怎么样，然后他去创造出一种情感叙事的那种回忆集。好，那我们接着就请 Roger 老师告诉我们怎么写看这个 memoirs 跟这个 autobiographies 的差别。
Memoirs are similar to autobiographies, but whereas autobiographies are more concerned with presenting objective facts about the writer's life, memoirs tend to be a collection of memories that focus on self-reflection and create an emotional narrative. So that basically explains to us what the difference is between autobiographies and memoirs. Again, autobiographies are kind of just telling us all about the facts in someone's life, and they don't have too much concerning the writer's feelings about those events. It's more or less just telling us what happened, like an article in an encyclopedia, and a memoir is more emotional.
好，那我们接着呢，你就要写出为什么你会喜欢这样的题材咯，为什么你会喜欢魔幻现实主义，或者是比较喜欢回忆录，你要告诉你的读者。好，那我们来看看课文范例他怎么说。
It goes on to say, what I find interesting about this genre is that it emphasizes how strange real life actually is when we stop and think about it. That's a very good point. Sometimes if you stop and think about life, it does seem kind of strange. Why are we here? Why can we move our bodies? Why can we do this and do that? That is really, really weird when you stop and think about it.
好，他这边就是说，他觉得这个类型它有趣的地方，就是说，他强调了现实生活其实是多么奇怪。其实有时候停下来想一想，真的是这样。那至于这个回忆录的部分，为什么会有人喜欢看回忆录呢？也许是他可以很详细的描述这个别人的生活经验。我们对别人生活可能所知有限嘛，有时候他可能简单一句带过，可是你不知道他当下的感受，然后他去体验这个整个过程是怎么样一回事。所以呢，也许你就可以说，透过回忆录，你可以去深入了解某个人的亲身经历，这样子，像这样去带出你喜欢回忆录的原因。那我们也请 Roger 老师帮我们试试看，这个换你写写看可以怎么说。
Here's what you might write. I love reading memoirs because I find other people's life experiences intensely interesting. We all grow up with limited knowledge of other people's lives, and it is hard to know how others experience things. Memoirs give us intimate knowledge of another person's lived experience. That sounds reasonable, of course. There are thousands of people all around us all the time. Hey, memoirs kind of help us know what's going on with other people's lives. It can be very, very interesting.
好，那接着呢，我们先要进入写作第二段的练习。这时候呢，我们就要举例，提出你从阅读当中所获得的启发或者是影响。那首先，我们就先要来举例说明你自己最喜欢的书啊、文章或者是故事。我们刚刚讲了哪些题材，你最喜欢的题材。那现在要举出实际的书来向读者做说明咯。那我们来看看课文范例它怎么说。
Okay, here's the first sentence. Of everything I have read, the story that influenced me the most has to be Miracle Polish by Stephen Millhauser. So this is a pretty direct introduction to the book that influenced the person the most. It has to be this book called Miracle Polish by Stephen Millhauser. And this book, of course, is in the genre of magical realism.
好，所以像我们课文翻译，他说，在我读过所有故事中，影响我最深的是怎么样 ？The story that influenced me the most is 什么，或是 has to be 什么什么，再带出那个作品。那像这边他就是带出一个作品是 Stephen Millhauser 的作品 Miracle Polish。那换我们写写看，你刚刚在讲回忆录，那你要不要举出这个回忆录的例子来让读者更印象深刻呢？那所以你也可以写说，在我读过所有回忆录当中，格外出众的是什么什么。举例来说，你可以写这个 Jeanette Walls 他的这个玻璃城堡 The Glass Castle 这个回忆录。这本书它其实也有被改编成电影过，也许有的人有听过。那我们请 Roger 老师帮我们讲解这个，换你写写看可以怎么说。
Okay, here's what you might write. Of all the memoirs I have read, one that stands out is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. So it stands out. It is unique. It's very special compared to all the other memoirs I have read.
好，那你现在说明了这个书名，接下来呢，你大概要简述其中的内容，别人才会知道嘛，不然你只提书名，别人不知道你在讲什么。所以呢，这边我们来简单的叙述说你讲的那个书名它的故事内容。像这边我们来看看 Miracle Polish 这个书里面到底在讲什么。
Okay, so yeah, what the heck is this book about, Miracle Polish? Well, in this book, a traveling salesman sells the narrator a small bottle of polish, which causes mirrors to produce attractive reflections. The narrator soon becomes addicted to how he and his girlfriend appear in his mirrors, preferring their reflections to the real thing. So again, this is in the genre of magical realism, and this is what the book is about. We've got a traveling salesman who sells a bottle of polish. If you rub it on a mirror, it will make those reflections very unique and special. So the narrator of the story becomes addicted to those reflections, how he and his girlfriend appear in those mirrors, and they like the reflections better than the real thing. So again, that's a fantasy mirror there. And yeah, I'd like to see a really cool image of myself in a mirror too.
好，我们看到他这个故事有提到一个 a small bottle of polish 一小瓶亮光剂，然后它会让镜子产生迷人的倒影。那叙述者就迷上了他跟女友在镜中的样貌，比起现实还更喜欢他们倒影。其实就很像我们开那种美颜相机，你从那个镜头里面看到自己是更好看的，你觉得不太喜欢现实的自己，对不对？所以这可以令人反思嘛。那换我们写写看，你刚刚讲到这个回忆录 The Glass Castle， 那我们来简单叙述它的内容。其实它就是在讲这个 Jeanette Walls 他在美国的童年故事，然后去讲他那个非比寻常又很疏忽大意的父母跟他们的家庭故事这样子。那他父母其实是很聪明啊，又有艺术天分，可是就是没有办法好好照顾小孩，而且有酗酒的状况。那我们请 Roger 老师告诉我们，可以怎么写写看这个 The Glass Castle 这本回忆录的内容。
So the writer has introduced this person's favorite memoir, The Glass Castle. So what's the book about? Well, it is the story of Jeanette's childhood in America and describes her home life with her extraordinary and often neglectful parents. While her parents were brilliant and artistic, they were also alcoholics who were unable to look after their children properly. So yes, her parents were quite smart. They were extraordinary. They were artists and they were really special. They were brilliant. They were smart. But they were also neglectful parents, which means they didn't really pay enough attention to being good parents. They were probably going out to parties and exhibitions and all the time leaving the kids on their own at home. And they also drank a lot. Gin, whiskey, vodka, scotch, etc. They were alcoholics. And as a result, they could not look after their children properly.
好，那接下来我们要写结论哦，就是要写这个书本内容对你的启发或者是影响。那我们来看课文范例怎么写。
For me, the short story reveals our cultural obsession with appearance and shows the dangers of this fixation or this obsession. It taught me to accept the flaws inherent in real life, however tempting it may be to cover them up. So yeah, I guess the point is don't worry too much about what you look like because it really isn't that important.
好，所以他这个故事就是告诉我们说，对外表的那种文化执念，还有这种执迷的危险性，然后让我们学习接受现实生活中的缺陷这些的。好，那回到我们刚刚那个回忆录，我们要帮他做结论，那就是看看说这本书带给你什么样的启发或影响。也许这本书写了很多这个父母的不太适当的教养，但是它也呈现出孩子们适应力是可以多强的。就算缺乏这些一般人认为的好教养，也不见得说这个孩子就不会成功嘛。所以这个回忆录的叙述方式就不但让读者感到震惊，也同时受到了启发。那像这样，我们就请 Roger 老师告诉我们说，换你写写看可以怎么说。
Okay, back to the memoir here. It says the book is amazing because it shows how resilient children can be and how a lack of good parenting doesn't necessarily mean that someone cannot make a success of their life. The way this memoir is written makes the reader feel equally shocked and inspired. So the parents were neglectful, but it does show us that children can be resilient. They can rise to the occasion and basically raise themselves sometimes, although that's not a good excuse, but it does happen sometimes. And now for part two, we've got our sample essay. Again, the title is The Story That Influenced Me the Most. And again, you learn to read when you're a child, and as you get older, you get more particular about what you read. And the writer here eventually decided that he or she liked magical realism. And these stories tend to treat ordinary events as extraordinary and extraordinary events as mundane. So if something tends to do something, it's likely to do that thing. And if something's mundane, well, it's just boring because it happens all the time and it's just so boring.
好，我们看到这个文章的第一段呢，他在解释这个魔幻现实主义时，这边用到 tend to 再加上原形动词，就可以表达往往会怎么样，经常怎么样怎么样，这是用来表达它经常发生的动作或是习惯。那也要补充一下，如果你是说 tend to somebody 或者是 tend to something， 这则是表达照顾啊、照料某人或某事物的意思哦。那我们接着来进入第二个段落。
Okay, so in the second paragraph here, of course, you're going to want to get specific and talk talk about a story or book that you've read. So the influential story the writer has read is entitled Miracle Polish by Stephen Millhauser. Again, polish is a kind of liquid that you use to make something nice and bright and shiny. You might have car polish. Once you wash your car, you can polish it so that it looks nice and bright and shiny, and you can polish other things. In this story, of course, the polish made the mirror appear a special way. And of course, the word polish is the same in spelling to the word Polish, which describes things from Poland, like a Polish person or Polish sausage, etc., etc. You might like to eat Polish sausage from time to time.
所以这边同学们要特别注意 polish 这个亮光剂的发音，还有这个 Polish 这是形容波兰的波兰人的，他们两个发音会不一样哦。虽然拼起来是一样的，只是我们在讲波兰相关的话，这个 P 会大写。好，在我们看到这个段落的最后一句，他有提到说要去接受这个现实生活中固有的缺陷，他这边用到 accept the flaws inherent in real life。这个 flaw 就是表达可能像是性格中的缺点啊、缺陷、瑕疵。那么 inherent 则是用来形容是固有的与生俱来的。然后后面他说 however tempting it may be， 就是无论它有多么诱人，这个 tempting 就是形容诱人的、吸引人的。好，那我们这边的讲解就到这里咯。
Okay, that wraps it up for August. We'll see you next month. From all of us here at All+ Interactive English, I'm Roger.
And I'm Hanny.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.